Did you know that your deepest wounds, rejection, self abandonment, shame, could actually become the greatest source of power, confidence, and magnetism? Well, in this video, I will share my personal story of transformation of how I turned my pain into purpose, into leadership, and how you can use your own wounds and transform them into power for your next evolution. Welcome to the Venusian Academy. My name is Silvana Kamala, and I help women transform their wounds into power using my method, Venusian Tantra. So, for many years, I struggled with some of my developmental wounds. At the core of everything was these two wounds, which were rejection and abandonment. The way that they manifested themselves as an adult, of course, evolved because as a child, you live the experience one way, but the feeling is there. So you continue attracting these situations and experiences that keep re-triggering the same feeling. And as you grow and evolve and see things, but don't heal the actual root cause, it's almost as if you start attracting the same game but in different costumes. In my case, I attracted it both in men and women. I attracted it in women that judge my sexuality, my voice, and I attracted it in men that wanted to either shrink or put me in a box that did not value who I was. So both of these really fed on each other. I was told to, be smaller, quieter, more acceptable, to apologize for my expression, to apologize for my feeling, and especially to betray my own intuition. And there was this push coming from life of betray what you feel, just submit to the norm, submit to the outside. And a part of me never really let go of that innocence in myself. However, these wounds start showing up everywhere, in friendships, in love, in my sense of self-worth, in my work, in how I was perceived by others. And I realized, okay, I spent all these years healing and drinking plant medicine, doing psychedelics and therapy and journaling and the methods and every healing method you can think of, I did. But somehow I was still seeing these things popping up in different areas of my life. Then a shift happened. I had a realization, and this did not come. This came literally through just me showering one day and contemplating okay, I'm the problem because the pattern keeps repeating. And then I realized that the problem wasn't really my wounds, but it was how I was relating to them. I finally shift this narrative of, oh my God, I have these wounds that I have to heal. I have these wounds that I'm going to transcend. Let me go drink more ayahuasca so I can heal my wounds. And this story, I know many women get stuck in this because, I went to many community healing circles. So I've heard this narrative, which is we are in this healing process. But whenever you look at you break down the word of healing and you look at the essence behind it, the way that it felt to me was that there was something broken and I needed to put it together. And that idea of trying to heal the wounds was actually the thing that was keeping me stuck. So I said, okay, what if this thing that I'm judging as a wound, let's say, for example, the wound of abandonment and the longing and the emptiness that comes from that is actually not a wound, but it's more. What if this feeling can give me more? So I started feeling the longing of the abandonment and feeling that longing of the abandonment in the areas of my life that showed up in the present, but connecting it to that same feeling that I felt as a child whenever, I felt abandoned by my father. So this feeling of longing, I started naming it and describing it. And I'm like, okay, it feels cold, empty, void, but almost there was a certain shrinking that expanded inside. The expansion wasn't out here. The expansion was deep in my gut, but it was an internal expansion that felt like a vacuum. And I realized this feels very powerful. It's like a powerful feeling, which is why it keeps showing up all these things in my life. And I realized that the flaw in my method was that the moment I felt that vacuum, I was stopping it and I was going into healing mode, into trying to understand. Let me journal, let me do this, let me do that. And in that everlasting, I never allow myself to like expand into that feeling. And the moment that I expanded into the feeling, I started feeling the raw power of that. And it's very difficult to define a spiritual and emotional power, especially before you have a framework or before you've experienced it. But it was almost like a reverse orgasm. It's like it was very big, but on the painful side of things. And the more that I felt, the more that I felt, the more that I expanded, I kind of did a 360, and it turned into this pleasure. And this isn't a process that was done with somebody or that I was guided through. It was just an exploration. And when I discovered this in myself, I realized, okay, I don't feel this stuckness anymore. But for me, the only thing that would let me know whether I was progressing or not was my physical reality, was my environment. So I did an experiment and I started tracking the moon cycle and the day of the week that I was doing these processes and associating it with some of astrological concepts, associating it with some tantric concepts. Like I mentioned, Venusian Tantra comes from a blend of Chakta Tantra, evolutionary astrology, Jungian psychology, and shamanism. And so I started like tracking all of this and leading myself through this process until I could like bring my feelings full circle back into pleasure. And my life externally started to change, because for the longest time I wanted to leave the United States and I couldn't, and I left for a few years, but then I had to be back, and for me that felt like a failure. And then I would go somewhere and then I had to go back. It was almost like I had to keep coming back. And then finally things aligned, where in a very painful way, but they aligned, and then I was able to make that exit, and I started noticing how the things I wanted started coming. Things did not magically manifest, okay? It's not like, yeah, I just felt it and then it manifested. No, I work for them. But the difference was that the opportunity to work for them actually presented itself, where before it was almost as if I kept missing the mark and not being able to get out of that realm. So I followed this process, and within a year, everything changed. It wasn't quickly, like just ding. It was more like it was fast, because it was fast looking in retrospect. In the moment, it felt slow because it was a very grounded process. No, there was nothing really delulu about it. But looking back, I was like, oh my God, I started this process a year ago and I'm already here. What else is there? So now, every time that whatever I feel, whenever a wound shows up again to be visited, I'm like, oh my God, gold is here. I have the ability now to turn this into this through this pleasurable process, that it starts painful, but then you start loosening and it starts becoming more pleasurable. And this is actually giving me more and more power. And power, feminine power, is not the power over others, or power over, because it's not a pyramid power. It's circular power. It's a power that you can share. It's a power that I started attracting people into my life, that after a conversation, they will always tell me, I feel alive, I feel invigorated, I feel like I can do anything, and I'm gonna start doing something, and I'm going to just be with this energy. And I also noticed how this power that I had, I was able to share it with others around me, and they were receiving the benefits of it. So that's the difference between, the usual patriarchal power model, which is very pyramid-like. I have power over you. There is a hierarchy, versus the power that is just shared from sharing our essence and radiating that which we are. And this was a breakthrough, because I started loving my wounds. I stopped thinking that I was too much and not enough, and I just simply said like, well, that's what's here, and what's here, whatever it's showing up, it's power for myself. So instead of endlessly processing and healing and healing and healing, finally I began channeling my energy into my life, into setting foundations, into rebuilding, because based on many decisions I made, I kind of destroyed everything I had built in the last decade, and I had to start over. And this was a blessing because I could start setting the right foundations and restructuring my value system, restructuring my belief system, understanding my boundaries, understanding my identity, rebuilding my ego from a very healthy, empowered way. Because the feminine path, like I mentioned in previous videos, is not about dissolving the ego. It's about dissolving the walls around our individuality, which is our ego, and building a healthy sense of self. Because a healthy sense of self, that ego self, is actually the vehicle for all of this power and all of the choices that it's like the reserve of power, and all the emotional alchemy that happens in that process of feeling and sinking into a feeling and then expanding into it and doing the 360 to turn it into pleasure. What holds it is your identity, which is your ego self. So I also realized that the more that I started embracing myself, the more magnetic I became. And magnetism, the very superficial way of seeing it, is like whenever your presence arrives somewhere, what is the impact that your presence has in that space? But from a deeper perspective, it's like magnetism brings like just pulling in the things, situations in my life that I want to experience, or that are going to give me more of that which I am. More wisdom, more recognition of my true power, of my essence, of the complexity of me. In more concrete terms, after going through this process, basically my friendships deepened, my romantic relationships became a lot more nourishing. I finally got out of this pattern of attracting like the same type of wounds, and attracting more enriching experiences that actually made me feel more like myself, and my life became more richer and more aligned. So this is the essence of Venusian Tantra. You don't heal by erasing your wounds, by erasing your past. You actually heal by transforming it and building your future with it in a way that it's very it doesn't dissolve who you are. It actually starts building who you are. You become powerful not by pretending that you are perfect, but by actually embracing every part of your story and creating enough space for all parts of you, even the parts of you that maybe are not so digestible for other people. So your wounds are a well of untapped energy and untapped potential. When you learn to dig, you discover that you are already richer beyond measure. So my invitation for you is to go from surviving to thriving. You don't have to carry the burden of your wounds forever. Even if you have ancestral wounds, this is ancestral power. You can transform your past into an absolutely powerful future and create an identity that actually fits your soul, not the other way around. If you carry past wounds, know that you have an unlimited power source within you, and unlimited power to feel, to transform, and to create the life that you want. If you're ready to transform your wounds into high voltage feminine power, then join my free workshop, Activate Your Power Archetype. In this workshop, I am going to teach you how to first find your unique tantric and power archetype based on your birth chart. And I'm going to teach you the process that I just walked through today so that you can transform your wounds into power and start alchemizing everything that has not been alchemized. So I'm going to leave the description in the link in the description box below. Make sure to reserve your spot. There are limited spots, and begin your transformation today. Hope to see you in the workshop.